is that we don't want to be breath teachers. We don't want to be yoga teachers. We don't want to be nutritional therapists. We don't want to, it's like, they all have their place, but to just be like, this is all I do. It's like, it just doesn't interest me and us. And it's like, I want to explore all those different realms. So when whatever it is that happens in my life, I can go to this technique and this technique and this technique and apply it to that, rather than being like limited on like, but I'm doing 4 breaths a second, or, and it's not working. It's like, the situation requires whatever the situation requires. It's great to have the knowledge of a technique, but it's like, they're not always going to be relevant and right. And it's like, you have to feel into it. And
that's what I think weMove is. It's an essence. It's a philosophy that believes in no labels, no boundaries. The no boundaries one can get, I think it's important to have boundaries, but go and explore things, treat people with respect, be curious, get out there, whatever out there is, sit with discomfort, just experience. Because that's the only way that you start to live, when you experience it.
So thanks for having me on the show, guys. I think this is number 100 to celebrate your great achievement. Now let's get into it then. So yeah, guys. So we met September with the great Tony Riddle. Got me on board to help out with a few things, washing some dishes and driving some vehicles. And you were shooting his Free Bear Peaks. And yeah, so we met then. And yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast. To the interviewers become the interviewees.
Yeah, I quite enjoy these.
How many have you had, first of all? Because I don't want to go where you've not. I don't want to go where you've been. I think you had a Run Dem Crew interview you, right?
Yeah, Charlie interviewed us. We've only done a couple, right?
Yeah, I think we did one with Charlie. We did one with the non-profit guys at Salt Lake City, which is more sharing a podcast, wasn't it, as opposed to anything else? Maybe like one or two others, not many.
Not many.
Well, I was going to do let's set the scene, whose voice is who, but I don't really think that matters, to be honest.
Well,
just figure that out, or they'll meet you and then they'll know.
Yeah.
This is about not identifying and observing the realities in which we exist, which I do want to say some things about what I've taken. Basically, I'll kiss your ass for a few minutes and then you'll feel really good. And then that's basically my setup for the podcast. And then you just crack on. But no, that's not going to happen. I do want to say, every time I do go on the weMove Instagram, or that's social media, whether it's the podcast, I do feel like I want to go on my Instagram and change the little intro that I've got of like 200 hours yoga, and just put like, something that's like not relevant to my identity and not trying to like be someone. And that's the kind of the feeling, like the experience I get when I like interact with the weMove. And I think that kind of, for me, that sums it up a little bit. It's about like being authentic to like the human experience, right? And like it's rooted in the everyday. And you've got a short film where, Chris, you're speaking over a couple of minutes, and it just kind of sets the tone of what weMove is about. But yeah, do a little intro, or we just play that. But yeah, Chris, did you want to do a little intro of like what weMove is, what you're about, and then perhaps we could do on where you met, but then we'll just get into the philosophies and the realness of it.
Sure, yeah. So weMove began. Well, we released the first thing that we put out, which kind of, I guess, announced our existence, was the first magazine that we did, which I think was the end of 2016. But we started working on that in the summer of 2015. And actually, James and I met. Well, we met like 20-ish years ago via a friend of ours. Got on pretty well over a dinner, and just kind of went our separate paths, and then was reintroduced by her, I think, in like 2014. And just kind of at the time, well, she reintroduced us because she said, you guys are going through something similar. I just left my career. James had just left his career. And she said, oh, you guys should just meet up and chat and hang out. And so we did. We met up in Soho, and I was just embarking on a new career as a photographer. And we just kind of got chatting, and I was trying to hit James up for some contacts to go and make a project about clothing factories in the UK, which just kind of didn't ever really happen. But what came out of that conversation was a couple of weeks later, I was going to go out to the Lake District and just kind of go camping, and James was like, okay, cool, well, yeah, I kind of fancy getting up to the lakes, I'll come. He knew it really well. I didn't know any of it, and we just kind of went and hung out for a weekend, and that was kind of as true to what weMove is today as it was then, which was just two people hanging out, having lots of conversations and lots of scones, and kind of exploring what various identities meant to us. And at that time, I just come out of doing a lot of triathlons and running, and all of a sudden we were running, and I hadn't run for about an hour or so, and all of a sudden we were running for like 6 hours a day, like up these mountains. But we would run, and then we would walk, and then we would stop and eat, and then we would run again, and it was just a very different experience to what I'd ever had with any type of movement practice, or in particular running. And it just kind of reframed it for me, and I was like, oh, actually I really like this, because prior to this weekend I really hated it. and that's kind of how it was born, really, just kind of two guys hanging out, kind of having conversations and kind of tearing down our own identities over a period of time, and just being really curious about the world, and both going through quite significant changes within our lives. And the film that you're talking about, Movement Transforms Us, really kind of succinctly puts that into a 1 minute monologue, which was taken from another podcast that we had done with a woman in the States, and just visually features us on the road, us hanging out with various movement practitioners. And kind of from there, we did a couple of magazines. We've done 150 podcasts now. We've done a whole bunch of films, and as we met, we were hanging out with Tony Riddle, making a film about his Three Bear Peaks.
Yeah, nice. So obviously it's going to have changed a lot over the years, but the intention of like you guys meeting, and then like that, wanting to do something together. Did you try and fill a need? Were you looking at it through what kind of lens were you looking at creating this kind of lifestyle brand? I guess it's a few things specifically, but was it always just about rooted in let's create something physical magazine, and then from that things can kind of grow off in different directions?
Yeah, it kind of started. The magazine was a bit of a tangent for what so my career was in clothing, and I left the brand that I started in, and I was like, I got really into running, and it was like, okay, I'm going to make some sportswear. And I didn't really want to, like, I felt like I'd been burnt with that. But it made sense because of the activities that I was doing to kind of bring out another clothing range. But I could just see if I did that it was going to go the same way of you just chasing this totally different thing. And it was hanging out with Chris and then having those conversations. It's like, you need to do something that's kind of rooted in really the message that you're wanting to put out, rather than, oh, just get a t-shirt and we'll say it's all about this stuff, and the world that we're living in. And they feel really disingenuous. And then Chris and I were having these, just like pulling down the industries that we both worked in and saying, well, if we were to do this again, then we'd kind of do it like this. And we did a deck, because we were very professional in the early days. And this deck kind of said all the things that we wanted to do in this world that we wanted to create. And it was always about like connecting people. But we realized that if you make, say, clothes or something that's designed, it's very easy for someone to go, oh, well, the world doesn't need more clothes, or I've just bought one, I don't need another one, or I don't like the color. But if we did a magazine then, or a book or a magazine, then it just creates a very different relationship with someone, because it's either someone, it gave us an excuse to go and meet people that were doing something that we were very interested in, like Wim Hof or Brian McKenzie or Elisa Vitti or all these people. And it didn't come with kind of like a business connotation. It was like, we just want to share what you're doing with the world. And at the time, everyone thought we were bonkers to do something in print, and we probably were. But it was that alone, I think, inspired people to speak to us, because it's almost like, who are these two mentalists doing this thing that is like, there's no way that's going to look good.
Well, I think
it just gave us an excuse.
That would have worked in your favor also, because it kind of it was a kind of alarm. Oh, these guys are putting together this, or, you know, and then the obviously the podcast, was that original as well? Was that one of the first things you thought, right, let's no, it wasn't.
No, we were, the podcast came about as we'd go on these trips. So we had one person to go and see in the States for issue 1. It was a guy called Carl Powley, and it just so happened, like, Chris and I, after the Lakes, Chris and I kind of went our separate ways for a few months. Did you go to Colombia or Guatemala?
Well, we met in the middle of 2014, and at the beginning of 2015, I had gone out to Colombia for a few weeks, and then then I had sold my house and sold everything, or given it all away, and then I'd gone to Guatemala. I was kind of traveling around, and then we met up in California.
Yeah, and it was really like, the whole thing for weMove was very very unplannable, like serendipitous, or because I said to Chris, I think we should do a magazine, and I hadn't really given it any more thought than that. And Chris said, in the kitchen of my house, he was like, who's going to take your pictures? And I was like, well, I just work it out, kind of thing. And then I was like, well, I'm going to San Francisco to meet this guy. And he was like, well, I'm going to be in LA then. And that was literally it. We flew out. It was almost like, brilliant. We've got a photographer in Chris. We've got this one person to see. And we went on this adventure, and one person told us about another person, and another person told us about another person. And that kind of snowballed that for 2 weeks. We stopped back in England after 2 weeks, and then flew back out to Japan to go on another cycle. So we'd go on these trips, and it was the 3rd trip that we did, planning for issue 3. I remember it was Chris driving along, and I think as we'd go, we'd be in America, we'd be tired, we'd be doing our thing, we'd be going through our own personal journeys, and then I can be quite flippant, and I think I said, we're not going to do a 3rd issue. And it was almost like, what? It's like, we should do a podcast instead. And it's like, but we're here to take pictures for issue. It was almost like, what are we doing? But it kind of worked. It just felt like the right time and for that. And the podcast just felt like the natural step. But now we're revisiting print. So we didn't want to be confined by a thing. We just wanted to use, and still do, the right medium to share the message with, rather than be so entrenched in, we're a magazine, so we'll always be a magazine, or we're a podcast, or we always make clothes. It's really the spirit and the philosophy, I think, and the energy that we want to share with people. And some people don't listen to podcasts. And there was a guy that I spoke to who knew me from my old work, said, oh, what are you doing now? And I said, oh, we're doing this magazine. He said, I don't read magazines. And I was like, it's probably not for you then. Like, because you don't buy magazines. But if we make, I know you run, so if we make clothes that you can run in, you'll probably wear them because you love clothes. And it was that kind of spirit with which not everyone has to like everything that you do, but I think the essence of it's a genuine thing that we're building, I think.
Yeah. And it's not fake. It's, you believe in it. It is kind of you. It's you also. And it's not going to be for everyone. And more often than not, people who, if you believe in something, it's more appealable, and someone's going to give it their time because they know, they feel it from you, and then they believe in you. So whatever you do, podcast not for them, the magazine's not for them, but something else might be, and it's coming from you, they're going to be more inclined to do that, right? And it sounds like you weren't forceful with things, which is a big, would you say like a spiritual side of yourself kind of feeds that, not being forceful and just letting things flow? Is that something that's like an intention, or is this just a natural personality trait that you feel is a part of you?
Well, for me personally, I am about as forceful a person as you can possibly come across. Like, I have that element to my personality where it's, I will go all guns blazing to make something happen. And but the polarity of that is that, I can also personally be quite kind of like a mellow about it. And for me, weMove is just not just, but it facilitates a part of my life where it allows me to to live that life where we get to go on the road and we get to meet these people and develop ourselves. It's almost like a give and take. It's like we take all this information from these people, and it's to balance it out, you have to give it back out. And at the present moment, that's in a podcast. Prior to that, it was in a magazine. In the future, there's going to be like clothes, and I don't necessarily, I think you bring the energy to it. You bring the energy to the project, or we bring the energy to the project that needs to be brought to the project. So the first magazine took 1.5 years to do, from going out on the first trip to actually putting it out. And there were times in that where it's just like, okay, well, we just need to go off. I think we probably did a third or 50% of the magazine in the first 2 weeks. It just flowed really quickly, and then it took 6 months to design, and then it took a couple more months to kind of go through the distribution and so on and so forth. And at times you require the pushing, and at times you don't. You just kind of sit back and let it happen. And I think that also ebbs and flows with how our personal energy is. There were periods of time last year where we just, for whatever reason, neither of us really wanted to do a podcast that week or for a month. And I think at that point, you just have to kind of honor that and say, I just, for my own sanity, I have to take a step away from it. And then over the past 2 months, or over the past 4 weeks, we've probably done like eight or 10 podcasts. We're doing like a couple of podcasts a week. It ebbs and flows depending on what's going on in one's life. And I think that's a requirement. I think, this, going back to identities, the spiritual identity of just letting everything flow can also mean that you don't actually ever do anything in life. And I've certainly been that person. I'm sure we've all witnessed that person. So I think it's just bringing the appropriate energy to the project that is required at that point in time. Unfortunately, between the two of us, we have the range of energies that can push, and the range of energies that can sit back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think podcasts, there's a reason they're very popular. It's because they can be authentic, and it's so easy to do right now. But the authenticity comes through when you're not forcing something. It's not always going to be, released at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. Like,
what comes to mind is the Tony film. Like, you saw the way that we filmed that, like I was up at 4:30 every morning, or pretty much every morning, filming it and grinding it out for 10 days, because that's the energy that was required to make that film. Yeah. But I couldn't do it for more than 10 days. And I couldn't do it on my own. I needed James to be able to do that. And, so it's like, and then at the end of it, it's like we're now 6 months later and we're just about to finish off the film. So that's probably the perfect example of bringing the right energy to something at when it's needed.
We've been really lucky in how well we've got on in the relationship that we have almost developed, almost just had before we even met. Because we have a relationship, a very close relationship, and it was sort of the first test was, and I think is probably a pretty good test of are you going to get on with this person for a long time? Go on a 2-week road trip with someone, and then go on another 2-week road trip with someone, sharing the same room, driving the same car, like it was
Eating all
like
meals together.
eating all the meals together, and it, you know, it's like,
What do you want to eat today? What do you want to eat today?
and we kind of realized, you know, every 10 days we'd fall out and then we'd come back together. It's like it's so like clockwork on how we work, but nothing's held against each other. And I think that's been well, we're still, I would say, the same.
Probably, yes, allowing each other to be how the person needs to be that day, and realizing it's not again, you know, they're not being an arsehole because it's you. They're just being an arsehole because that's what they need to do that day.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. This is your arsehole day.
Yeah.
What day is it? Oh, 10th. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Relationships, they are between two people. It's like unconditionally just letting someone be them and giving them the space to be them, whatever shape or form that is. And then, you know, they'll come around, they'll come back. If you believe in their values, then you'll both win, won't you, really?
Yeah. And that's allowed us to do there's never been any competition between us, even though we're probably we're both competitive, but with very different personalities of being competitive. So actually it quite works. We're not trying to then compete with each other. Like Chris will grind out for 10 days and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, but if we were both there grinding, we'd have just ground each other down on that film. And I was just like, my role is to drive, make sure it's just to drive. Like, I don't mind that at all. It's like, it's equally important.
Knowing your roles, that's a really important.
Yeah. Well, yeah, particularly on that trip, because I was aware that that's how I was having to be in order to get the film footage that we wanted. But if I would have had someone else in the car next to me that was exactly the same, it would have burnt us out after 5 or 6 days. Whereas, like, sort of, you know, knowing that, okay, well, we need to stop and have lunch, you know, and I wouldn't have stopped to have lunch. I would have just kept on going. But actually, you know, we needed to stop, and so that allowed us to continue to do it. Yeah, we have a very complementary relationship in that way. Like, we kind of have our roles, and
opposites attract. I find a lot of people who are similar to me, I don't really get on with that well. 2 for 4. One thing I want to say is climb a mountain with someone like you did. Be uncomfortable together. Not sexually, but, you know, be uncomfortable together. Go in the cold water, and you'll find out who someone is, and you'll find out what they really value. You know.
Yeah.
That was a great mountain, wasn't it, that we climbed, Ben Nevis, on that particular day?
Oh God, yeah.
There's a line in the film that's from me. Just as we get to the point where the weather comes in, I'm like, it was this epic -4 50-mile-an-hour wind day, and that's how I wanted it to be. I wanted him to suffer. It's the final test.
It really was the final test.
Oh,
good God. The final third of that mountain, I mean, it was like another planet.
Yeah, it really was.
Just scaling that, coming off the path, and then like, there it is, that's the path. Not hearing each other, like Tony's feet, was like really concerning.
That's really, it's really good footage from that. It kind of, you know, that's how we open the film with that footage. I mean, it looks like the moon, or what I suppose the moon looks like. Like, you know,
polystyrene boulders.
Yeah. It looks extremely cold, and Tony looks like he's suffering a lot. And it's a great beginning and end to the film to see someone doing it like that, and his feet look awful.
Right. When's the film going to be out, do you think? Or
just kind of depends. There's a few things going on just in terms of distribution, etc. So I mean, it's practically finished. Is the final thing to do. It wasn't supposed to be the film that we've made is not the film that we were supposed to make. It's a much bigger film that we decided to do and commit to. So that's why it's taken a bit longer. But it looks great. It looks really great, and it's just really nice to watch. I mean, I must have literally watched it about 40 or 50 times now in the editing process, and there's just great times. You can see people having really great times, and you can see someone going through you know, the peaks and troughs of what it must be like to do an endurance event. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like, you know, I felt the endurance event every day. But I also felt the flippancy. I don't know about you, Chris, but I remember there being certain days when I'm like, why doesn't he just do another 5 miles? Like if he does another 5 miles and he's got 5 miles left, you know, it's like he's already done 50. But you can't help but be flippant in the moment.
Yeah.
Epic achievement.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. It really was.
We did a podcast with an interesting guy actually, and he was talking about endurance and how the misunderstanding of that word, and actually the endurance means to your ability to bounce back.
Okay.
Which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, not to suffer. It's actually to
bounce back ability.
Yeah, exactly. And like actually the endurance begins at the end of it. Like when you've done all that running and seeing then Tony. I mean, it took me a while to recover from that, just being on the road and processing it all. So they're not the bits that are talked about actually. The integration is the endurance event of everything that you've been exposed to and put yourself through, which I thought was an interesting way of viewing endurance. So you get all these people that like just bounce from endurance event to endurance event, but really miss what the endurance is. Like it's constant escapism rather than you need to do the work afterwards, which I thought was quite an interesting idea.
And what part does health play in endurance also? Because you often find that it's probably stressing the body a bit too much doing so many of these fitness events. I mean, you used to be a runner, didn't you, Chris? Well, still are, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, just from observation of Tony, you know, for the obviously up close this time and from a distance last time, and then just seeing different people. The question that always comes to mind for me is like, why would you do it? and because you know there is a lot of suffering in it, or from what I can see, there's a lot of physical suffering, and I've kind of, you know, I suppose I have done endurance, but in a different. I've done endurance in a what I perceive to be a spiritual sense of, you know, long fasts and solo time and lots of long meditations. And I think, as James says, it's like if you come out of that event or whatever it is you want to do, and you're not trying to and you're not reflecting on why you've done it and what's happened, and you're just jumping into the next endurance events, then I think you're kind of missing the entire point. I don't think the point as a human being is to suffer. I don't believe that we're here to suffer. So if you're going from one event to the next, suffering upon suffering upon suffering, like surely the most successful endurance event is the one where you get to the end and you don't need to ever do another one. Like whatever it was that you needed to work out, you worked out on that event, and you can release that and let it go and have your peace. For me, the state of a human being is one that's in peace.
That is development, right? You're working on the things that you need to work on, and then, you know, whether that's a goal, your mission, it ties into the bigger mission. You're actually like ticking these things off, right? I've let that go. I've achieved this, but it's helped me like internally with this, not just suffering for suffering's sake. Because it does thing to me physically, and that's what I'm kind of addicted to almost.
I was going to say, I think they can become addicting, particularly when you have lots of breakthroughs, but breakthroughs on themselves are worthless if they're not actually integrated into your everyday life. And actually the integration is kind of ironically probably the endurance, actually the real endurance. You know, to sit with actually having to integrate something over a much longer period of time, perhaps, can be hard work.
Yeah.
What springs to my mind, and has done for a few weeks now, is in that endurance event. I'm getting to a point where I'm pondering whether people actually, they think they know why they're doing these endurance events, like cognitively, but it's still too head based. And that's not to say they're not important to do, but they almost give it too much mental thought. And it's like, just go and do it. If you feel that calling to go and do this thing, go and do it. And really don't give it any more thought than that in the mind, because the mind starts to play tricks. and just go and do it. And in a way, go and do it and don't talk about it. Like just go and have this experience.
Yeah. How does not talking about it feel?
Yeah, but not even that cognitively. It's like just go and do it. Like, because they're so personal, but they become like it's being lost in the intellectualization of this pursuit. And it's like, you know, you want to run the length of the country, you want to run around the world, knock yourself out, go and do it. Because the majority of people could probably do it, whether they'd want to do it, whether they're in the shape to do it. But, you know, we did another podcast with a guy who did he run around the world, Jamie?
Is that something you forgot?
No, he ran from Vancouver to Buenos Aires. It was like a long way.
Yeah, he ran a long way, and he, you know, it's like the obvious question of what training did you do, and he's like, I didn't really, because I kind of knew that the training would happen along the way.
Oh, you can't train for that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You know,
he did a month of 10Ks. Just wanted to make sure that he could run consistently every day.
That's it, time on your feet, isn't it? When I was I did 106K ultra, and it was just, it doesn't matter like what time, distance, I need the minutes on my feet. That's what it was. But yeah, what was I going to say? Around kind of embodiment, I guess, is almost what we're talking about here as well, and how embodied are people and how much are they living in their heads. I think it was interesting what Rick Cooper said about, it was kind of like slippery ground where you're like, people are missing the gym because there's, you know, we're not allowed to go in gyms, but you know, why are you missing the gym? Like, why are you letting that eat you up? And I think it was the competition versus connection podcast, which was phenomenal.
Yeah, his was great. And he's like I love hearing him speak, because he's exactly how you imagine someone that spent a lot of time in the gym. He's just a big guy. And then to hear him talk about this other light side of connection is just, I think that's when people listen, rather than a little scraggy person going, oh, you know, why are you going to the gym? It doesn't really make.
No, I know. Yeah. Stop virtue signaling. It's like, yeah. He's been through it, hasn't he? You can physically and mentally. He's definitely been through some crazy experiences, and he embodies that. Like, you could just the way he holds himself and the way he speaks.
Yeah, he's I think all of these people, what I'm realizing is, and I said this to Chris the other day, I think it's really, and this could be taken in the wrong way, but like everyone who's trying to do something, like put a message out there, they're just trying to heal themselves. And it's like when you find running, and then you become the person that goes, oh, have you run? Do you run? You should totally run. Running will change your life. And you're like, all right. And I've been that person, you know, and you see so many people.
I was saying, cold water change your life.
Yeah. And it's like, all right. And I think that's just having that recognition. That's kind of that they're different flavors. That, like, Rick's not for everyone, but he's got a really important message to say. And if you can be open, and then if you can share from that level of being, that human level, there's something to learn from everyone to embody, rather than it being about healing for healing's sake. Because you get to it. I've just noticed your name, Chris, on Zoom, Nina. And I love seeing people's other names, their alter egos on Zoom. I forgot my train of thought. Clearly wasn't that important.
That's gonna be a trailer for the podcast. Yeah. To what extent do you think people hold back on what they say as a fear of, I mean, you can generalize on this, but just to hear your thoughts. Like, because I often find that people do hold back on what they really think because people won't accept it. And like, what I've got to share won't resonate with everyone. Like, you have a powerful message, but it's not like, no one in the world, their message, the motivational. See, Tony Robbins was not going to connect with everyone, but he will connect deeply with a few people, many people. And I feel like all people have a message, and they have experience and knowledge in their experience, but they sometimes don't share that because they are not going to be accepted and it's not going to be received.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And even last night, I sent a message to Chris saying, "Is this too much for WhatsApp?" And Chris read it and was like, "No, not at all." I didn't put it out because
for Insta.
Yeah,
I was going to say, what did you do? Send him a pictures? It's too much. Too much for private messaging.
I think that comes down to, you know,
I think that's healthy.
But I think it comes down to, you know, you get into the realms of authenticity, right? It's what you're doing shouldn't be done for someone because you're doing it for someone else. It should be done for yourself. And, you know, some people are going to like you and some people aren't going to like you, and that shouldn't change it. Shouldn't change your message. And I think there's certain tools that help you get to that stage, because I think it is conditioning that stops us from going there. You know, this desire to be accepted or be liked by others. And I think part of that work, and it's just work that I'm doing at the moment, is the shadow work, where you realize that you don't have to be liked by everyone, and actually it's more important for you to speak your truth. You know, I think when you speak your truth, you attract the right people to you. When you don't speak your truth because you're worried about speaking your truth, you ironically end up attracting the wrong people to you. So it's but not, you know, that seems to be a hard lesson to learn, or a hard place to continue to be for some reason, or at least it takes reps to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you speak a lot about your shadow work. Could you share some of that, because I think that's powerful for people to kind of, you know, understand, I guess.
Yeah, shadow work is it's a term coined by Carl Jung. Well, firstly, termed by Carl Jung, and working in the realms of polarities. It suggests that there are areas of our personalities which we don't like, and areas of our personality that we like. And the ones that we like are the ones that we show to people. The ones that we don't like are the ones that we put into the shadows. And so therefore they're the ones that we're judging to be bad. Like, we don't like those sides of ourselves. And of course, they're still ourselves. So if you're judging that side of yourself and you're putting it into your shadow, you're actually, what you're saying is you don't like yourself, or you don't like certain elements of yourself. And over a period of time, that it begins to grind away. But what happens is you can't really hide it. Like, it will eventually seep out into everyday life, or, you know, or when you least expect it, or when you're emotionally compromised. Really good example is Richard Nixon, who was kind of presented this front to the people, and then of course when the Watergate tapes got released, they realized that he was just very paranoid, and, you know, the type of language he was using was very different to the type of language he would use you know, to the public. And so the aim of shadow work is firstly to become aware of those sides of your personality that you judge and that you don't like, and then once you become aware of it, then you can start to accept it, and then you can start to bring compassion to it. And it can be an uncomfortable process, because you obviously have to accept that maybe you're not as awesome as what you, well, it's not that you're not as awesome as what you thought you are, but you have to accept that there's areas of your life that perhaps aren't as awesome as you would want them to be. But what's beautiful about it is that once you start to realize that, you start to realize it in other people too, and you start to realize that, you know, everyone has their own shit to deal with, and, you know, no one knows what another person's shit is, you know, deeply. And so you start to become a bit more compassionate to people, and you stop taking the victim mentality of like, you know, this happened to me, or it's not fair, or whatever. And so for me, like, you know, like I was alluded to, or like I said, you know, one of those areas for me is, for example, is I can be quite extreme in my behavior, and kind of decoding that, you know, one of the reasons that I can be quite extreme is just a sense of self-worth. So, you know, if so I'll either engage in something wholeheartedly 100% to achieve it as a way to have self-worth, and to gain acceptance, and praise from other people, or I'll go completely the other way and not do it whatsoever because I don't believe that I can be very good at it. And so why would I waste my time doing something I won't be very good at, because it will mean that someone else won't actually like me. And of course, what that means is that I end up doing things, I end up missing out on doing things just for fun because it's always so serious. I'm trying to achieve something all the time. And the type of energy that requires just means that you don't end up really enjoying it after the initial kind of stance. And then, so what I've come to realize about shadow work is it ultimately all boils down to self-worth. And, so the work that you're really doing is realizing that you are worthy of yourself first and foremost, and worthy of everyone else. And that these areas of your personality that you want to reject, or that you do reject, or that you don't expose to the public at large, are not bad things. They're just areas of our personality, and they can be channeled in ways that can be productive. So, I would say what we're seeing, say with the explosion of BJJ or martial arts, with men around the world, is actually just a form of being able to express this kind of, excessive masculine energy of wanting to kind of get down and wrestle and fight like you do as a child, but as an adult you're not, it's kind of not necessarily viewed in the best light. And so you find you can find areas within your life that you can go and express those things. So you can go to BJJ and express this kind of aggression that maybe you want to express, that's part of your personality, but it's within a safe a safe zone type thing, and you can kind of walk away from it. And because it's been expressed, you haven't hidden that area of your personality in the shadows. You've explored it and you've allowed it to come out for a period of time, and then you can go back to being the other side of the personality that you like to be. So it's just it's been tremendous work for me, and I kind of bemused that it's not taken me this long to get to, but I wish I would have gotten to it a lot earlier. And when I think of past therapy, and I kind of now can analyze that therapy, saying, we were kind of stepping around the edges of shadow work, but I didn't realize that this is what we're doing. And I wish I would have realized that, because I think actually, if I would have realized that, it would have been complementary to the therapy work that I was doing, rather than just doing one session a week, or, with a therapist. I could have gone away and explored that shadow work on my own. And you can pretty much do it every day. Like there's as far as I can see with myself, at least, there's areas of myself that I judge every day. So just kind of bringing some compassion to those areas and accepting those and seeing what they are, and not downward spiraling into hateful thoughts or negativity towards oneself, but sort of saying, I get frustrated, and the outcome of that is rage or anger. And unfortunately that got expressed at this person today, and I realized that's because I was trying to hide this away from that person for a long time, and eventually it just seeped out, because it always was going to. And actually, if I just would have been honest in the first place, then I wouldn't have put myself in the position where this would have happened, and then I wouldn't have put myself in the position where I was judging it. So it's brilliant work. I would hold the flag up of shadow work to everyone, and say that it's worth exploring for everyone. I don't know anyone that doesn't have a shadow.
Yeah, we all have this. We all have these sides to ourselves. Thanks for sharing, man. I do think it's powerful, and you explained it very well. You've clearly done a fair amount of work on it. And
there's a journal here full of entries.
The shadow book. Yeah. For me, I love men. I'm a part of two men's groups. One local, we normally meet in person, and another one called Man Talks by Connor Beaton. I don't know if you know who he is. But yeah, it's phenomenal. And we just delve right in. There's an hour, and we meet an hour once a week, but it's all online. And we just delve in. We just delve into all these aspects of ourselves and what it means to be a man, and the darker sides, and how can we bring balance, and just calling other men to action, which is powerful. And could you call this a framework of could you call it a framework of seeing yourself, the self? So the shadow work, the light self, the dark self. Is it like could you call it a framework of like, you know, looking at your person?
I suppose there is. I suppose, yeah, it could be called a framework. I mean, I think it's one of multiple types of work that can be done and should be done. Maybe not all at once, but over a period of time. It certainly helps you to see the polarities within your personality, and it certainly helps that statement of know thyself, which I think is key, absolute key. I think it ultimately brings a lot of peace to oneself. Mm-hmm. You know, again, going back to that going back to that example of, say, the BJJ, and it's like, okay, well, I know that I need to express anger, I need to express rage, and I just want to, you know, beat the fuck out of someone else or whatever. I just need to get this energy out. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, I can go to this class, and obviously I can't beat the fuck out of someone else, but you know, I can physically get that energy out of my body rather than sitting here in a rage, not knowing how to express it. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm not sure if framework's the right thing, but I
only ask because I've asked a few people, you know, what do they think about their shadow aspects of themselves? Do they think about it? And a lot of people don't really know. They don't. Some people who are not in the kind of self-development or you know, who think about consciousness in the way I suppose we're talking about it, they don't actually spend much time thinking about it. And I think if it's presented in sort of, this is a framework we can work from, it's kind of a way in for people, perhaps.
Yeah, right. Okay. So yes, I think it's one element of like an overall framework. Because, you know, they're sides of your personality. For example, let's use like inner child work and shadow work. So, you know, the shadow work is what we've just been talking about. The inner child work is about going back into your childhood and working out perhaps, you know, like say abandonment issues, or, you know, why you have these abandonment issues, or you know, why there's certain traumas that you have in adulthood, and being able to kind of dilute the energy that comes with those, you know. So take for example the abandonment thing, which can then express itself as jealousy. So, you know, I'm not, but, you know, let's say I'm a really jealous person. Mm-hmm. Like, why am I jealous? It's like, well, what is jealousy? Jealousy is about not wanting to lose something. Mm-hmm. So why do I not want to lose something? Well, perhaps when I was a child, you know, my parent, in that first 7 years, we know that, you know, children are in an altered state of consciousness, and they don't realize things for what they are on the surface. So, for example, my dad goes away for, you know, I don't know, to work, but as a 4-year-old, I interpret that as abandonment, and that gets taken through into my adult life. And so that abandonment wound then becomes jealousy, because I don't want to lose my partner. And so I think, you know, the shadow is about delving into the personality and the aspects of our personality. I'm not necessarily sure that we have control over the aspects of our personality, but say with the inner child work, you then can work out why there's certain traumas or certain behaviors playing out on repeat patterns or repeat cycles within one's life. So I think there's a whole bunch of different modalities that can kind of go together to create a framework. I wouldn't say shadow work on its own I suppose in a micro sense it is a framework on its own, but I would say it should sit within a framework, a bigger framework of shadow work and inner child work. And I think you could also probably put ancestral healing in there, or knowing about your family too, and realizing why your parents are the way they are, and, you know, why their parents are the way that they are, and why that comes down, like sort of the lineage. So on their own, absolutely, but as part of a whole, I think it's viewed better.
Yeah. I think it is important to develop a safe container to allow these things to come out, to be expressed, whether that's with friends or whatever, whether it's just talking about them or just having a space where you can release these sides of yourself, which is going to be safe.
I think you hit on the key word there, safe. Everyone's just looking to feel safe and to be safe, and what I think can be a behavior that's termed to be negative or bad is actually, you know, when you look at it in depth, it's just that person trying to feel safe. Like I'm controlling the situation. It might be that I'm controlling the situation because actually I just need to feel safe. and and by controlling how the other person feels, and I get to feel safe. I personally don't believe there's any, or I personally believe that every negative action can be brought back to that person feeling safe.
Yeah.
But that within the framework of looking at, say, that trauma that everyone carries, or the shadow work that everyone carries. Why does someone go to prison and come out and commit the same crimes? It's like, well, the opportunity, in my opinion, hasn't been given to them to work out why they weren't feeling safe, that they had to express themselves in that way. It can be a hard pill to swallow, that.
Because, it's a hard thing to people to get their head around,
because you want to point the finger and call someone evil, and actually
it's not as simple as that.
I don't believe that to be true at all.
Yeah, there's a quote, one of the Greeks, no man ever knowingly does wrong.
Right. I can appreciate that. I can understand it, and I would say I agree with it.
Yeah, because in their mind, they feel it's the right situation or the right action for them at that particular time. But when you frame it like that, it's a game changer, really. But I'm really trying to, maybe I'm overthinking, but I live directly on the beach, and I'm always curious of why do people feel so content walking down the beach? It's one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately, and I think, wow, it's they're connecting to nature. There's no traffic, everyone's got dogs, everyone's pretty content. But I think more than that, it's that everyone feels safe. They know their surroundings. They can see everything in front of them. And it's fascinating to me, because when we're in cities, when we're in towns, it's not just that it's busy and, we've got things to do. It's actually that we don't know who's going to tap us on the shoulder. We don't know what loud noise is going to go off. But when we're on a mountain or out near the seaside, you can see so much. And that immediately you just drop into such a safety,
James, wasn't there something when we hung out with Tony Molina about the central nervous system and about being able to see like your range of vision? Am I making that up?
Maybe combining two different times. There is something about, it's interesting because I used to live in Brighton, and I found it a very melancholy place to be by the sea, and I felt that it would bring a lot of sadness for people to be by the sea, and also a lot of possibility. I think actually it's why England has been so great, maybe not so great now, because it's like there's possibility on, there's this distance that you can start to dream and start to think, and I think that's
back in the day we didn't know so much, perhaps, as in you travel around and what's beyond the clouds.
and I think that's and definitely there is something to do with horizons, that we need horizons, and when you start to restrict our view, then you can start to feel hemmed in, and I feel like that in cities.
The retina, whatever it is, doesn't relax. It focuses so much, and when you look at a big landscape, there's nothing to focus on, so your eyes do relax.
So you just zone out. So I get that.
Having lived in New York, the intensity of living in Manhattan, where the only time you can see sky is kind of if you look straight up.
Wow.
I just felt so stressed out the entire time. Like you just like the walls are caving in on you constantly, and even just moving over the river to Brooklyn, where buildings were only 4 stories high, and you could see so much more of the sky, was just so much more relaxing. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, we look at it in New York as such a good achievement of humanity, don't we? We look at it, well, many do, as this monolith of culture.
They're weird. It's so weird. I mean, I've moved to northern Portugal, and there's
you've got stones in your walls.
Got stones in my walls, but it's really interesting to live here, because we've definitely come from an ecosystem, in the, I guess, the social media ecosystem that we've inhabited, which is quite label heavy. and like creating these little pockets where you can feel safe. It's like, oh, the barefoot people and the this and the that and the, you know, the plant-based, and no one really knows what it means. And when we came here, they don't have organic food where we live. Chris has heard this a million times.
Oh, is this the organic food story?
This is the organic food story. They don't have organic food here. They just have food because they're like, we grow, we don't use, like life just feels very simple, like really back to source. And then that, like hearing Chris talk about shadow work, of which I've done, and I think it's fantastic, and all of this stuff, and you know, they can all get in the way of what the thing is that we're trying to do, which is, like Chris said, feel safe, but return to source. And we feel safe at source, and there's a lot of clouding and confusing and giving things different names, and different names for the same thing that you trying to understand, but what does this mean compared to this mean? Like, you know,
they separate.
Yeah, and I kind of thing for me is like, okay, explain being an omnivore and plant-based, because to me they're both the same thing.
Yeah, they're both extremes, and they're both.
But they're not necessarily. An omnivore is just eating everything, and plant-based is saying have a plate that is the majority plants. It doesn't say not eat meat. So you're kind of really saying everything, and then it's taken.
Is it not?
So confusing.
I would have thought plant-based. Well, it's the basis of plants are the basis, I guess.
Yeah, but it doesn't say don't eat meat, and like things are very open to becoming confused, and when we become confused, we don't feel safe in confusion. Like, and I think that's like the idea of being, when you buy the sea, you know the deal. Water, land, it's really simple, isn't it? And when you're in the mountains, you're small in the, like you're with it. There's nothing, there's no tarmac in the way. There's no, you know, 7-Eleven store or high street. You just like, we're on Ben Nevis, fucking freezing. Like you're so connected with that because you have no choice. There is no other way. That I think that, like you said, that's how I would, rationalize you saying you feel safe in the mountains, because actually a lot of people won't feel safe in the mountains because all of that stuff that they're so used to isn't there.
Yeah, that's very true.
Where are the streetlights? Where's the pavement? Where's the this? And it's like back down there.
Yeah,
12 miles back there, you know, and they're like, oh my god, I'm freaking out here, I'm freaking out, where's my cappuccino? It's like, just chill out, you're totally fine.
I also think that your problems are very insignificant in that moment. You look out to the sea and you're like, wow, like this is unchanged in however many billion years, and it'll be here for many billion years.
Yeah.
And that in itself, just knowing that unconsciously, subconsciously, it just drowns out literally all of your insignificant little daily niggles or problems or things you're caught up on. And
I think that's like hearing you guys talk, I was just writing notes, and like on the shadow work and all that, is it a framework? To me, a framework can become quite limiting, because you try and then pin everything within a framework, but sometimes you need to take down the framework. But then when you take down the framework, you're freaking out because you've not got a framework and you're so used to having a framework. And I like to think of them, all of these methods, they're all tools, but they're navigational tools to support navigating your journey back to balance, peace, and potential. And that's, if they can be seen as tools, that when you become competent using those tools, you know when to use them and when you don't need them, but you can dip in and out, and you can start to create your own journey through stuff without going, hang on a sec, right. Chris and I were talking about getting back to nature, and you know, you can imagine an app going, oh, step one, stand up out of chair, and you're like, okay, brilliant, we've done this. And it's like 15-point checklist to open the door, get out, and lie down in the grass. And it can be, someone can just follow it, and but never really. I'm doing all the points. Chris, I'm doing all these points, but I'm still not relaxed. It's like, because you haven't closed the book and just be in the nature. And I think that's what people have when they go to the sea. Like you say, there is nothing.
I would say also, this kind of summarizes weMove really, is that we don't want to be breath teachers. We don't want to be yoga teachers. We don't want to be nutritional therapists. We don't want to, it's like, they all have their place, but to just be like, this is all I do. It's like, it just doesn't interest me and us. And it's like, want to explore all those different realms. So when whatever it is that happens in my life, I can go to this technique and this technique and this technique and apply it to that, you know, rather than being like limited and like, but I'm doing 4 breaths a second, or, you know, and it's not working. It's like, you know, the situation requires whatever the situation requires. It's great to have the knowledge of a technique, but it's like, they're not always going to be relevant and right. And it's like, you have to feel into it. And, you know, what James was saying, that the nature thing, and this, you know, what precedes that as a conversation where someone was talking to us about a guide for nature. And it's like, there is no guide. You're already nature. Like, yeah. But then at the same time, some people need a guide, you know. It's,
well, I think they're such big, the simplicity is such a big, I mean, it's such a big philosophical question, like, well, you are nature. I mean, you know, who was saying, it was Rory Sutherland that actually said, you know, a fish you don't ask a fish to define what water is, because they can't. It's like because they live in it. They
don't know anything else. Yeah,
they don't know anything else, and you can't. They're almost such big things. So I kind of think, like, you don't need a guide. But you do need tools. But you might need a guide just to get going, and then it's almost the purpose of the guide at the end. And we were talking about this, like, you build up in the steps, so you develop that, you go from unconscious competence or incompetence to, you know, conscious incompetence to conscious competence to unconscious incompetence. You have to build them up. And that's what a lot of things don't do. They kind of trap you, like all these methods, in their own little settlements along the way. And it's like, welcome to Carl Jung's city. and you never leave, and the number of people that never leave and go and explore what's beyond, like, well, what's beyond the shadow work. It's like, cool, I've got a shadow, but I have awareness of it, and I can feel it coming. And I was in a part of the men's group, and I remember saying to them, I was like, yeah, I've had a really curious time, because I was like, I'm starting to kind of develop a relationship. I can't remember what it was, but I said, I'm experiencing anger. And one guy said, well, you're angry. And I was like, no, I'm not. I can just see it there, but I'm not interacting with it. I'm just going, okay, I see you, anger, but you don't need to become me. I'm not embodying anger to become angry. And that was pretty cool. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes I just get angry, but like having that awareness to be able to see it and not interact with it and go, cool, when I need you, I'll call on you. But right at the moment, I don't need you. And that was like having that tool, rather than to cognitively understand, I'm in this part of this framework and still angry, still want to rage against something, rather than going, cool, I'm just pretty mellow. Because actually with, say, BJJ, I think all of these things, or movement practices, they become melting pots for someone trying to express. And then when you see someone who is fully at that place of balance, peace and potential, harmony, equanimity, they're like crazy. They're like, not crazy. I was meant crazy as in a good way. They're like, you know, in BJJ, it's like you just can't beat them. But they don't see it as, I want to inflict pain on that person. It's a total game. And they're slippery when they need to be, but they're vice-like when they need to be. And you almost see other people, their shadows coming out, and it just turns anger and rage. And they get more and more, they're trying to beat this thing that doesn't need beating, because they're like, this is loads of fun, isn't it? You're going to try and squeeze that part of my neck in a minute, so I'm just going to do all this stuff and get out of the way. And it almost comes from love. It's the totally different side of that, but you see them both together. They neither embody anger or they're just totally in the moment, and they're not stuck in the shadow. I think lots of people go to express their shadow, but they express it rather than go, oh yeah, cool, I've got it, and have peace with their shadow. That's it. Because you don't need to light up the whole thing, because then you're just in floodlights, and a rabbit in floodlights or headlights just looks a bit startled. You almost don't know which way to go. So I think it's good to have a shadow. It's good to have awareness of your shadow.
Yeah, I think
awareness when it comes.
Awareness is the key, isn't it?
Yeah, because sometimes you need a dark side.
Oh yeah, you need it's what I think engage is a good word, because you're engaging the anger, or I'm going to engage the warrior now, or these archetypes. And archetypes is a great,
I think that's a great framework.
Yeah.
That was how I came to shadow work, when I did a sort of a long weekend, and it was, the 4 archetypes, and just being able to see that, and having the awareness that, my king cup is a bit empty. I need to top that up, because it's my warriors trying to fill up my king cup, and you're like, whoa,
Put your sword away.
Yeah, the sword. Yeah, exactly.
Put your sword away, and lay down the silverware. Service that you're about to welcome people into your kingdom.
Yeah, without, and I think that warrior one, that idea of the sword, it's like when you've got a fully topped up warrior cup, the sword never comes out. It never needs to. It's just so solid and just like in its power. It's when it goes empty that the sword kind of starts to creep out, and then it just turns into rage, and you're like, oh my god, rage with a sword. Just we've got to put that sword away, but you can't. So I think that's a brilliant framework to be able to navigate. I think the archetypes maybe is the ultimate framework, and the others are tools. Mm-hmm. So you can be curious about why does the sword come out now? And then Chris has got his inner child work or his shadow work toolkits, and you can use those. I think that's how I would set it out into a framework for you. I'd have a framework that is toolkits and archetypes. End of speech.
Yeah, nice. What was I going to say? Have I gone really dark on my video?
No, I think you're
the exposure in your face is fine.
Lovely.
Blacks have gone black.
I was engaged in the shadow a little bit more than I needed to. Yeah, man. I think people are going to click on this podcast and be like, weMove guys. Yeah, they're really going to, I need some value. So I need some new practices, or I need some things to, so I can make my life better. So I was thinking about this, and I'd like to know your process also about like how you prep for podcasts, and whether it's just very fluid, and you do any.
Who are we speaking to again today? That's the prep.
Sometimes it can be just before we start. Can you just tell me who you are again? Sometimes it could be like that.
Introduce yourself and tell me why I've got you on.
If you could, just do a 5-minute intro, and then we'll riff from that.
Yeah,
we take it very seriously.
No, there's a balance.
I mean, with the podcast, it generally tends to work with one of us is seeing someone that we find really interesting, and as in we're engaged in some way, and we kind of send it over to the other, and like, let's podcast with this person. We recently started doing more kind of series based, so choosing a topic and podcasting with people within that topic. Yeah, which has been nice, because it's allowed us to step away from the expert tag and talk to the everyday people tag,
which is more relatable for some. That's the most value. I mean, someone that's like you're getting your Wim Hof on, and he's a very kind of unique, to put it one way, unique guy. You can't really relate to the man, but you everyday people are going to provide others with so much more inspiration.
I think so, yeah. I think with those big names, they have their patter so down that you almost don't need, when they've done one podcast, it's like, cool, just click on that to find out about Wim. And we were really fortunate to spend time with him right at the beginning. And Chris wrote a great piece, I think, in weMove issue 1 about what Wim Hof is about.
Yeah, which gets lost, doesn't it?
Totally lost. Yeah, it's all lost in the breathing and chasing the high. And I might butcher what you said, but it was just basically about returning to love. Which you're like, well, hang on, that's not getting in cold. That's not like the macho side of getting in cold. And it's like, just kind of go easy on yourself. You have potential, and you have potency, but you need to love yourself and forgive yourself.
Too much focus again comes onto the tools. So they're just tools. You should be able to put them away, whenever you need to, or pick them up whenever you need to. But that's not the thing. Like, what is the thing? Which goes back to the conversation of endurance. It's like, it's rowing around the world is not the thing. Yeah. It's what is the thing?
I think with those people that have methods, and we've met quite a few people with methods, and they devise their method to help them get through the experiences they were having. And I think there's real validity in that. But it's like anyone can get in the ice, go in the ice. I was going to say knock yourself out, don't knock yourself out. Go in the ice, breathe in the ice, be safe in the ice. But for Wim to find that, his wife had to commit suicide. There was like a sequence of events that you wouldn't wish on anyone. So he found this thing to help him go through that grieving process, that healing process. And I think that's the same with everyone that's devised a method. And it's very easy to then commercialize a method and it to get lost and it to actually not do what you need it to do, because people are so fixed on that method rather than using it as kind of guides and ideas and going, okay, that bit's worked really well. This is what I need. And again, I guess it comes down to understanding that shadow of what you need so you can build your own method for you. And I think that's sort of my interpretation of Chris saying, we don't want to be yoga teachers. We don't want to be this, that, and the other. It's like yoga helps for me when I need that thing.
Yeah.
And breath work is, but I don't do it all the time. I have a cold shower every day because if I do that alone, that just tops me up.
Yeah, you're a better person. You're nice.
Yeah, it just feels nice. It gets my body going. It like regulates it, but it doesn't have to be sub-zero water. As much as I love that, I just haven't got my freezer here or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's why I do connect with weMove, because I felt like growing up and more like in my kind of later teens, early 20s, I was delving around groups. I'd never really saw the benefit in going from group to group and being the person that did that. Didn't necessarily have a core group of dependent. And of course there are good advantages and disadvantages of this, but I found myself going from group to group and being the person who just was doing that, like getting out my comfort, but like going to this group for like this type of thing, whether it was an exercise or whether it was a certain type of going to town and they did it a certain way, or we went to this club, and I was the person who just bobbed around from group to group, which I was thinking about quite a lot before the podcast.
Yeah, that's interesting. Chris and I were having a chat yesterday about kind of what we are, and we often come back to this idea of just being explorers. Like we're really into like physical exercise and sport and stuff, but never to be necessarily one thing. We've kind of gone through that. This is, I'm a climber and Chris is a footballer, but we've kept ourselves in reasonable nick that if someone says, cool, do you want to go for a 10-mile run, we can get around it and not feel too shit the next day. But we're just curious. We're really, really curious. And I feel like it's that explorer's kind of mindset, and you find this distant land that we've made.
Yeah.
It's not about going and you know, rinsing it and for everything it's got. It's just going, tell us what, you know, this is amazing. Like, and just embodying it and being with that little tribe and never disrespecting it, because they've got something to teach you. And then we just bring it back and share it. It's like, oh my God, we went on this trip and this was amazing. And
you're the Bruce Lee of podcasts.
Well, maybe. But I think because we say we're for the curious and also for the committed, because you sometimes find yourself in a place where you just need to keep going, however uncomfortable it is, or however much discomfort there is, not necessarily pain. And I think that's kind of a cool place to be, because it's like hearing you talk about all those groups and then hearing your stories. We were going up Ben Nevis. It's like, they're really interesting. They're diverse rather than, well, the most boring wedding I ever went to was a climber's wedding. Chris, again, has heard this story. I only have a few stories and you'll get them all in this podcast. And
these are all the stories I had in the first car journey.
And everyone was a climber. So or all the guys were climbers. And I felt really sorry for the bride, because no one was drinking, no one was dancing because they all didn't want to get an injury. Everyone was checking their phone for the weather forecast the next day, and none of the guys were eating anything. So they were all miserable, hungry, just wanting to be somewhere else. And it was like, this is really dull. Like, when everyone is the same, talking about the same things. I don't want to talk about climbing at the wedding. I want to like know what you're up to, or just have some fun. And I think that's definitely been my MO of doing weMove, just to have like not free gratis, but just be welcomed in all these different camps and then connect them together with enthusiasm.
What's that Chinese proverb? Know the way broadly and you'll see it all in all things.
And that is also, we come out of these things going, everything's the same.
Yeah.
Everything is the same. And that's not to
devalue it.
To devalue it, just going, whatever floats your boat, whatever flavor you like, you know. And there's an interesting demographic in weMove. We've got like this, we've got the yogi side, and then we've also got this kind of super like hyper masculine American side that are super into like hardcore training and guns and being in the outdoors. And but you see, or I see these two groups and it's like, oh, you're both the same. You know, actually the ones, this hyper masculine group, they're all talking about love and connection, and then the yogis are talking about love and connection, but you'd look at each other and go, no, they like guns, I'm not talking to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like strength. When you look at a yoga studio and you look at a gym and you think, well, they're just two different kinds of strength.
Yeah,
they're very similar.
Yeah, and both very valid, because you need those. Again, it's those tools to navigate that journey. You know, be as strong as you like, brilliant, deadlift's great, but someone's just said that you look a bit too big in those jeans, and you've just crumpled into a heap. It's like, well, you need to be able to go, okay, cool, I like how I am. Like, strength is in so many ways, not just muscular. So I think actually, it's just so fun. We're still working out what weMove is. Like, for some people that want a really structured thing,
yeah,
weMove can seem like a real mess. But I think if you're curious, because it's not for us to tell someone how to live and how to be. It's just like,
that's also attracting the right people to you, because those people will, not be interested if they want some structure and they want to know, they want to be told what it is and how to do it. Yeah. And that's fine. That's okay. We need those people.
Yeah.
But they're not your people. And that's fine too. But it's also, if you two are staying true to yourselves and what you believe is right, and what you believe to kind of go this way, go that way and change, then those people are going to gravitate towards you guys. So you win.
Yeah. And it's not about winning. It's just like, because Chris often says
I
to me,
feel you disagree with that.
No, like I said, I just want to get on, not get on. I just want to live my life, and weMove facilitates a way to live a life that I want to live, and that is to kind of go and explore and dip toes into various modalities or techniques, or just buckets of water. and have a great time doing it. And when we go away for these like road trips, it's it's like, great, let's just go here and just check out this cafe, or let's go to this epic landscape, as well as going to see the world's greatest deadlifter, or whatever. It's like, and we'll go from seeing, like James said, in the morning we're going to see like ex-military special or ex-special forces guy, and in the afternoon we're going to hang out with a yin yoga teacher. And I like being able to do that. Like, I don't want to be categorized, and I don't want to set myself into one identity. And again, like, just be able to, I can be fucking uber competitive when I need to be, and I can go there, but I can also not be competitive and just let it be. And it's just, you mentioned Bruce Lee. It's like the flow like the water thing. It's just let it flow and pull the right thing in when the right thing is required, or have an awareness of where you're at, and go to what you need to when you need to, rather than being like, but I only practice Ashtanga yoga. I cannot lift a barbell. Like, that's just not in my practice. It's like, you're fucked. I don't care whether you're level 4 or not. If you're so ingrained into that one technique and that one style, then that is a metaphor probably for the rest of your life. As in, not the rest of your life as in the duration of your life, but everything else that's going on in your life. Be free, be flexible.
One of my biggest fears, or like things that I'm aware of, is being old and not being able to change my life when I need to, because I see it in a lot of older people, that they're very rigid in their ways, are set in their ways. And this could be, of course it's old age, and it's harder because you are more prone to go towards the comfortable, because it takes that tremendous amount of effort to change or to be a bit in discomfort. But being older and say, I need to downsize my house, and this is something I need to do, like, this philosophy is truly going to help that, and help me be an older person who can change with the time still.
When we were doing I was doing a podcast with a girl called Georgie Holt, and she, I kind of was getting to the point where I was we were talking off the podcast, and I was getting to the point where I was kind of embarrassed, because I seemed to be like this know-it-all that just had a story for everything. And she's like, you've got so many stories. I'm like, I'm just curious. I'm literally curious. So like, I want to go and spend time there, and I want to
tell you a story about
that. But it's like, I'm just curious. And of course, I think the byproduct of that is it builds up reps in things like being able to change, or we both changed careers, for example. So doing something different, or pivoting weMove, because it's no longer a magazine, it's a podcast, and next year it's just a series of films, and then the following year it's a clothing label, and it's because that's what we want it to be. Like, I don't get so locked in.
There is a constant in all of that. Like, they're simply physical mediums that all live and die, like everything. And I've got this belief that you just need to let something die when it needs to die, and it can grow again. But people really hang on to that physical thing rather than the essence of it. And I think what weMove is an essence that we can apply to different things, to different, it's bringing it back to food. We can grow carrots and raise chickens on the same land, but the essence is still there. It'd probably follow Steiner philosophies and just returning back to nature, but they're both totally different things. They're totally different mediums with which to experience nutrition and the connection to the earth, and that's what I think weMove is. It's an essence. It's a philosophy that believes in no labels, no boundaries. The no boundaries one can get. I think it's important to have boundaries, but go and explore things. Treat people with respect. Be curious. Get out there, whatever out there is. Sit with discomfort. Just experience because that's the only way that you start to live, when you experience it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't come from books. It comes from being.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost say actually the magazines, particularly, it is kind of the integration for us. Like, you know, we went out and did the trips and met all these different people, and then we kind of got to sit down and write out a reflection, which was an article, and that kind of helped us kind of integrate whatever that teaching was. And it's so funny because we keep having this experience where we go back to issue 1 or 2 and we're like, wait, what we're really into right now, we wrote about 5 years ago. But you just bring a new understanding to it, which I think is probably a signal that we were on the money, but things and awareness just develops and grows. And you know what, you know, we were just, we were on the money with what we were interested in, because it's like we're still kind of with that piece, you know. Methods are many, but principles are few, is I think Brian McKenzie's quote.
I thought it was a principle.
Huh?
I said, is that a principle? Yeah, amazing, guys. Yeah,
that's a framework.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing all that. I think we've done the job of not defining it and letting it just speak naturally, right?
Good luck in writing the defining podcast notes.
I think change is massive, isn't it? And these devices are allowing us all to kind of follow our passions even more than it has ever been.
Yeah.
To do that, and the future is so more uncertain than it also ever has been. So change is one thing we need to all embrace. Yeah,
but I think that there are lots of certainties. Actually, I think that it's the frameworks that have been constructed around us that are breaking down. But in a way, it's like, if you don't live by a framework, you're kind of free to move in and around it. When people are they live within a framework, and you do as you're told, and you're this, you're that, and the other, and all of a sudden you find yourself very dismembered, disconnected, disempowered, disenfranchised, all of those things, and you've no idea where to turn. But when you're connected and you understand that it's a framework, you can leave the framework and you can return to the framework.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing.
And not be attached to the framework.
Yeah.
It's like, I love a good bed, you know, but I'm equally happy to sleep on the floor, you know, on the ground on a mountainside. And so many people won't. They wouldn't. Oh, what would you do overnight? You know, where's your bed? It's always just on the floor. Or you might have to sleep standing up, or we're not going to sleep tonight. They're all really good things to experience. So you realise that.
I'm laughing, thinking of all the various places that we have actually slept.
Yeah.
Or not slept.
Yeah, I remember when on our first trip, we went to Camp 4. And I remember, you know, we ended up in the queue for Camp 4 in this campsite. And everyone else knew that there was a queue system. So they brought it was like they were camping out for the January sales, or, you know, or a latest sneaker drop. Their camp chairs, their sleeping bags. And then there were these 2 guys from England that turned up in shorts and t-shirts and in the mountains. And even though it was summer, it still got pretty cold. And they were like, have you not got anything? It's like, no, we'll be all right. It's like 20 hours later, you know, no sleep. But it was the first time that I realized I'd slept out without any sleeping bag, mat, bivy bag, tent, or whatever. And even that was an experience, just to go, oh, wow, I don't actually need anything. I'm totally fine to sleep without any of the stuff that I've been told I need to sleep with. I mean, it transpired I didn't go to sleep, but just to spend that time, which was out of a comfort zone, but I would happily sleep on the side of a mountain if I had all the gear. But this was relatively safe, apart from the bears, you know, but I think that's it.
Camp 4, what is Camp 4?
Camp 4 is the free campsite in Yosemite National Park, which is the spiritual home of big wall climbing. So we wanted to go to this campsite to hang out with all the big wall climbers, and it's a free campsite. So we arrived. Everyone was saying, "Oh, have you booked?" And we were like, "No, I mean, don't be silly. That's not our way." Turned up, campsite full, and they let like, I don't know, they were letting like 3 tents in the next day, but you had to be in the queue. But if you left the queue, you couldn't go back in the queue where you left it. So we were like, "Oh shit, okay, just sit in the queue for as long as it." It was like, okay, it opens the next morning, and we got there at 5, and it would open at 5 the next day. So we were like, "Oh, okay, let's go. Let's go and sit in the queue then." But you realise you don't need anything.
Could you talk to him about what are you calling it? It's on your website. It's a human something.
Complete human experience.
That's the one. The complete human experience. Is this something you've done before? I think I only noticed it today.
Well, we were due to do that. That was our idea for a gathering of people.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, what could we do? Like, give people the weMove experience, but in a controlled environment. Because we'd often have people going, "Oh, can we come on these trips?" It's like, "How do you do it?" And it's like, "Well, we just book a plane ticket." And actually, as simple as that was, there were so many people that wanted to come, but were like, "Oh, well, I can't do that. I can't, and it's like, "We just book a plane ticket and come with us." It's like, "Oh, well, all these things." So we're like, actually, it needs to be in a vessel for them.
Yeah.
And what we realized was, okay, if you have this 4-day immersive experience where we have kind of the people that who've become mentors to us, whether it's breath work, whether it's biohacking, whether it's yoga, whether it's shadow work, if you have that all rolled into 4 days, you need to have the integration is really important. So the complete human experience was this 4-day like hero's journey, followed by a 10-week integration period where you'd work one-on-one with 3 of the mentors of your choice from the CHE from that 4 days. So you could like build up what it is you want to do, or make plans for, for creating whatever it is that you want to do, your stumbling blocks, etc. But we felt that you needed that amount of time to actually go through the process, rather than, brilliant, you've had this mind-blowing trip for 4 days, crack on, Monday, enjoy the office. It's like, fuck, it's like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And almost the first thing that anyone should do after having those experiences, don't quit your job Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Just like give yourself a bit of time to work out whether you want to do it. I know that because I've done it. And then you spend a few years working out, oh shit, that was a bit rash.
I did it and I'm happy.
Yeah. Oh, happiness, absolutely. But
but you've got 30 days notice to figure out if it's really what you want. But your relationship with your boss will never be the same.
No. And so that was the CHE. It tied in with we were going to do it in 2019, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I had a little aberration, which we decided to not do that. It wouldn't have been right to do it at the time. And then we hit then it was recovering from what happened, and then it went into lockdown. But we will, I think the world is craving connection.
Yeah. And these experiences that are, you can't have enough of them, honestly. It's at our core, I think. These rites of passage, these moments with other men, with other people.
Yeah, and this was that was an interesting. It's like, is say CHE men or women, or it was human. So what we were hoping, the opening for it at the time, whether we'll do it again, but was basically we kept it very hush hush. Like there was an application process. You had to apply. You were judged based on your biopsychosocial needs, whether you'd fit into the group as a whole, and it's for 40 people. So 10 groups of 4 or 5 groups of 8, however it was splitting up during the day and over the 4 days. But there were intentional, what are they called in the hero's journey? They're like things that happen that you like challenges, I guess. So we wouldn't tell people how much it was until they'd been offered a place, and that would have taken 3 weeks. So you just got to commit to going into the unknown. So it's all about threshold guardians. That's it. There were a series of threshold guardians just to even get to the place. You know, you'd have been sent your train ticket to get on that train, to be at this spot, and everything was taken off. And the idea was it was going to be in North Devon. You'd be sent out on high-speed boats into the Atlantic Ocean to come around to this cove. And this kind of summed it up for me. And then it's like 100 meters out. It's like, okay, see those fires on the beach? Get yourself in. And like that begins it. And what we realized was, and the group was structured in such a way that you could almost see the people, I believe, on paper that you'd have like this Viking of a guy that's like freaking out going, I can't swim very well. And then this little, this older like mum going, come on, love. Come on. And they like develop this really close bond over the course of the time, because they start to represent the yin and yang of themselves. And then you create these groups, and like everyone having these collective experience, collective and very individual experiences of the same thing. Because we were calling them metaphors, like the ice bath is a metaphor for many different things, because it's super clean. The ice bath is just cold ice water, but what you bring to it is stuff within you. So it's a very unique thing, but so they would go through these series of things and experience all these things, and, music, sound, frequency, food, talk, like sleep syncing, and we were going to really control it to when people wake up. We were going to put them into how if they're a night owl or an early riser, we'd have been telling people to start to wind down at certain times. It would have been quite an interesting thing. And there were lots of reflection times, and everyone slept outside, and you'd have had your tent take. You'd come back after a big day, and like your tent would have gone, and it's like, cool, you're sleeping out under the stars tonight, and all of this stuff too. And again, very safe and all of this stuff, but just to have those connected, collective, individual experiences that go through. So that was a complete human experience. And then, but I think we'll do it. We will, because I think they're really important. And we've kind of met more and more people now, and whether we do it, it's just, when people can come together, they will happen. But I think that is also an evolution of weMove, to like start to experience it and support people. The first phrase we heard actually when we met Carl Powley, we kind of all said it. It was like, it's about giving people a permission slip to go and be who they really are.
Yeah.
Like, that seems to be the ultimate thing that people need, because you don't need all this stuff, but you almost need someone to go, it's all right, go and go and do that. Yeah, quite.
You go, you need some rest.
Yeah. and then that's a weird thing, like that idea of go out into nature, and we'll support you how to do it, but then also make them feel safe enough that they can go and do it on their own without the need and the stabilizers of the course or the person with the method. Because I often say, who gave the certificate to the person that created the method that you've now paid for a certificate for? I think Microsoft Word probably gave it to them, didn't they? They typed it up themselves. I have my certificate for this method, which I often think is a weird thing. That world of certificates. If we replace certification with experience, I would much prefer to go with the guide that has the experience rather than the person who has the certificate.
Yeah, he's got 6 badges on his arm.
Yeah, and the latest jacket.
Follow me to your almost certain death.
Yeah. Have you ever done it before? I've got the certificate, all right?
Well, I'll let you be the judge of that when I tell you I've got the certificate. Good framework. Good stuff, guys. I respect your time. Thanks for coming on. Do you want to point people anywhere? weMove.world, Instagram.
Yeah, weMove.world and www.wemove.world and at weMove.world on Insta. And that's, that's us.
Lovely. Any final words?
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Good. Sweet. Thanks, chaps.